It is now 2029 and officially 10 years since the Green New Deal was signed by Congress. At this moment, we're going to take a look back at the last 10 years and see what has changed because of the Green New Deal, especially those things related to the clause about changing the situation of frontline and vulnerable communities. So who are these communities? For the sake of this presentation, we'll group them into three different distinctions. First, indigenous communities, rural poor, and urban poor, because each group experienced climate change in a very different manner. At this point, we can officially say that climate change has been solved. Carbon emissions that are an all-time low, the temperature globally has stopped rising, and thus ice caps have stopped melting. We have transitioned to almost 100% renewable energy. And in these frontline communities, education rates are way up. There was a slight increase in national average, but there was a huge jump in indigenous communities, as well as Appalachian region communities and urban communities, as a result of the initiatives taken because of the Green New Deal. And this education has created a domino effect in frontline communities. Poverty is down as those students move back to their hometowns, which has decreased substance abuse, and health has gone up as a result. So has the economy, as the students bring back higher paying jobs. In 2019, we elected the most diverse Congress-elect. However, each year after that, it got more and more diverse, and the students that the Green New Deal has helped to educate have continued to stay involved and advocate for what they think is right and change policy in their own ways. Let's look back at 2019. In urban communities, there was problems with pollution, resources weren't clean, such as the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, which looked eerily similar to what the future Rachel Carson painted in her book Silent Spring decades earlier. And then in indigenous communities, there were open uranium pits that had not been cleaned up properly since World War II. There were pipelines going through their natural resources in sacred sites that also threatened oil leaks into those resources, contaminating them. And then in the urban community, or in the rural communities, strip-top mining had destroyed the landscape, as had major agriculture, which had leached all the nutrients out of the soil and destroyed forests. And then the miners face increased mortality rates, as seen in a study. In Nature Post Nature, Timothy Clark points out that in the discussion about climate change, nature and humanity are seen as opposites. However, this may be more escapist than a critical gesture. So this idea has led to things like trendy environmentalist movements, such as going vegan or using reusable straws. However, this creates an issue for the frontline communities who may not be able to take part in this type of environmentalism. However, they have been protesting, but they haven't been listened to, which is one of the key issues. The indigenous communities protested pipelines, the urban communities protested the ability to have clean natural resources, and then in the rural communities there were protests against mining. The other thing is that these communities did not have the means to help be environmentally friendly, because long histories of discrimination and oppression had left these communities in deep, deep poverty. And without the means, they can't contribute to an environmental society. So what they really needed were resource reclamation projects, the ability to have programs that put people in non-green industries back to work in green industries of the future and education. So one of the first steps we took was actually listening to these communities and collaborating with them. In 2011, a convention was put together with Indigenous leaders who had information about climate change and put a greater aspect of how climate change affects ecosystems. And then Indigenous communities were offered buy-in solar and wind farm projects. The uranium pits were cleaned up, sacred sites were protected, and scholarships in environmental sciences were offered to Indigenous students. In rural communities, there were huge pushes for work projects that put people in the coal mining fields back to work in clean industry, as well as resource reclamation projects that also put people back to work while restoring the environment. And then in urban communities, community cleanup projects were undertaken. Infrastructure was improved so that everyone had access to clean and fresh resources. And of course, scholarships were offered to the students within these communities in order to get into green education. So looking back, the things that worked were actually listening to the communities that had valuable things to say. And the Green New Deal also proved that our system in Congress is still effective and still works for good change today. Looking forward, we need to remember that while things have been solved for now, new problems are going to continue to occur and will continue to need new solutions. But we can build off the great momentum we have now to continue to advocate for a cleaner, a greener, and a more fair world. Thank you.